Hello and welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Trey Harris, and these are this week's top stories. Last week, Disney stock numbers were revealed to have dropped astronomically under CEO Bob Chapek. Initial plans to get the stock to increase were to reveal Disney's newest roller coaster. It's called the Plummeting Kingdom. In another attempt to raise stocks, Disney has also revealed their latest reboot, Bob Iger. Last week, Nancy Pelosi stated she would not seek a leadership role in the Democratic minority. Now, many pundits have voiced their theories as to why, but we here are inclined to believe that she is considering our advice about California raisins. Research says if you want empathy, don't be sad. If you want to take it to the next level, make sure your name isn't Karen. A colossal exoplanet is said to be the most massive super-Earth ever discovered. My question is, does it exist within or without the Van Allen radiation belts? You know, those things keeping us from going back to actual space? Also in the news, hard-hitting journalists are asking, do eco-friendly credit cards make a difference? The answer is obviously no. They still create debt. NASA says it lost communication with the Orion ship for 47 minutes. Those darned radiation belts are at it again. Well, a little closer to home, scientists say the Earth is now in its 7th mass extinction. Of course, this is a fact. All those civilizations that came before kept such extensive records. And not to be outdone, astrophysicists solved the mysteries of massive black holes. Because, hey, if the Earth guys can make it up, so can they. We've got more to cover with this week's top stories, but first, a message from our president.
True international effort to pressure.
I mean, you get started, man. Don't start on it. And by the way, that's my grandson, Bo, up there, and my granddaughter. Don't let him jump.
Any rate, you know, we got to get on with this. First of all, the votes are in. They've been counted and verified. There's no ballot stuffing. There's no foul play. The only red wave this season is going to be a German Shepherd commander who knocks over the cranberry sauce.
All right. Well, folks, you just can't write stuff like that. You really can't. So also, if you guys, and when I know most of you do, but if you saw, I think it was a few episodes back on the Dan Badandi show, Dan covered the 10 climate commandments that the Pope has put out. And we've got a list of them here. If you guys would like, I'm going to go ahead and read you this and offer my 2 cents on the scenario. All right, let's get into this. Number 1, think of future generations. This is coming from the leader of the church who's been known for years for abusing little boys. So we're not starting that one off very well. Number 2, maybe this will be a little better. Number 2, alternative energy sources, or embrace alternative energy sources, maybe solar panels, which, according to Energy Sage, can cost anywhere between $11,144 to $14,969, and that's for a single house, which is obviously pocket change when you consider the impending inferno NASA says will come eventually. Number 3, consider pollution's effect on the poor, i.e. those people who are spending all their money on solar panels. Number 4, take the bus. If you live in the city, don't even think about riding your bike or your small compact car. Or shoot, even if you have a big SUV, that's definitely a no-no. Instead, why don't you go hop on the diesel-guzzling gas dragon And if you don't live in the city, move. Number 5, be humble. Quote, we're not God. The earth was here before us and has been given to us, says the vicar of Christ. Which, if you don't know, means the Pope allegedly speaks with the voice of Christ. So by his own words, he is basically calling himself God. Number 6, don't be a slave to your phone. These guys obviously didn't get the message. Number 7, don't trade online relationships for real ones. Well, glad to see we agree. Shut down the metaverse. Number 8, turn off lights, recycle, and don't waste food. Well, maybe with the exception of the middle one, but I would think that anybody who pays their own bills is at least turning off their lights and not wasting food. Number 9, educate yourself. Make sure you're tuning in to Course Correction TV, the Dan Badandi Show, Now You See TV, to ensure that you are thinking for yourself. And finally, believe you can make a difference. Because in reality, I think I can just isn't good enough. You must embrace the power of positive thinking because only you can prevent wildfires. Now, we could sit here, we could crack jokes all night, and if you guys know me, you know that wouldn't bother me one bit. But the reality is when it comes to these commandments, these climate commandments that are coming from the Pope, this should raise the alarms of literally every single Christian that is paying attention to things like this. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in the book of Daniel, and we'll get into this in a minute, in the book of Daniel, it talks about a man who will speak great things against the Most High, and how they will have the power to change times and laws, and these are the very things you're seeing. I was a teenager when the current Pope took over, and that was the first time I ever really paid attention to who the head of the Catholic Church actually was. And it was, of course I was a young, naive kid. I thought this guy was, I called him the dope Pope. But it wasn't that I really started paying attention and to this right here. Once I really started reading the Bible for myself, I noticed really how problematic the beliefs of the Pope and just the papacy in general are. And so, if you will bear with me on today's show, we've done a little bit of this before, but what I'd like to do is take you through some of the thoughts. At first, I'm going to take you through Daniel chapter 7. And maybe Revelation 13, so we can really get an idea of who this is. And, if you, like I said, we've done shows on this before, so feel free to go check those out. But I really want to show you that the consensus for years, it wasn't up until like the 1950s that even Reformed circles officially started changing their stance on this. And I'll show you that by going into the Westminster Confession, that is literally the booklet that the Orthodox Presbyterian Church would get you, and show you how through the years the Westminster Confession has been edited to take out the parts that talk about how the Pope was the Antichrist. Now, I think this can be rather problematic because we're seeing the Antichrist agenda placed before us. We'll also take a look at a man who claimed, and I believe it was true personally, but a man who claimed to be an ex-Jesuit by the name of Alberto Rivera, who came out with some interesting claims about the Jesuits' involvement in these plans as well. But first, we're going to play an ad for Shake and Wake Radio. Annie, thank you so much for carrying our show, guys. Make sure, if you have not, that you are checking out Shake and Wake Radio, and we're going to roll that ad right now. So if you're like me, you're on the road a lot. Hey, Trey here with Course Correction Radio and TV, and I just want to ask you, if you are traveling, why are you not listening to Shake and Wake Radio or right over on shakeandwakeradio.com? And this is what we've got it right here on the screen for you. And as you can see over here, we've got tons of shows. They're set up right for you guys. We've got the Cutting Edge, the Midnight Ride. We've got Remnant Restoration. All your favorite shows that you guys are used to, all in one place, and that place is shakeandwakeradio.com. So make sure you guys head over there, get that saved in your favorites on your browser. That way you can have all of your favorite edifying content all in one place. shakeandwakeradio.com. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 33.3 News. I believe this is our first ever live 33.3 News. So I hope you guys enjoyed that silly little montage of jokes and gags and things like that, because I'll tell you, I personally enjoyed doing them a lot. We're going to be talking about some dark stuff here today, really and truly. That's not going to fit there. So I wanted to make sure that we could at least have, some laughs and some giggles. But more importantly, I want you to see how ridiculous this actually is, especially if you're viewing this, maybe not live, but, maybe later you find this, you're viewing it for the first time. Especially, I want you to see just how silly these things actually are. We have a man who talks about being humble, but yet has adopted the title Vicar of Christ, which literally means in place of. Vicar comes from the same root word as the word vicarious, which is a word described, with Jesus' death on the cross, his vicarious death on the cross, right? He died in our place on the cross. And so when you're looking at somebody who says they're the vicar of Christ, what you are dealing with there is a person who is saying that they are in place of Christ here on earth. So hopefully we can see the ridiculousness of that. I mean, that's just outrageous, completely outrageous. So what I'd first like to do is I want to show you, just read you a little bit of Daniel chapter 7 if I can. And, and like I said in the pre-recorded segment of today's show, all of our videos, we've talked about these several times. Now, I've had people ask if I can put links to them, but the reality is I don't always remember the video that I talked about it in. I wish I did, but you can head to if you go under where you're at right now, there should be a place that says, Course Correction TV. If you click on that, it'll take you to our homepage. Click on videos. You can find the entire catalog of YouTube videos that are up there. And, you'll find, like, for instance, on 33.3 News, we talked about how, there was a little horn in Daniel chapter 7, there was a little horn in Daniel chapter 8, and how, you've got two beasts of Revelation. There's one of each, right? And so, but what I'm going to show you is how the Pope is showing his hand that he is at least one of these beasts, because he's changing times and changing laws. Now, he may not be the first beast of Revelation chapter 13, but this particular one, but there's definitely, it looks like the popes want to be one of the beasts from Revelation chapter 13. So let's get into that. Daniel chapter 7, and we're going to start in verse 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And the 10 horns that were in his head, and the others which and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth, that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns of the kingdom are the 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. And he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and the dividing of times. Now, I think that part's critical, because it says that this kingdom will be diverse from all the rest. Now, me personally, what I find so fascinating about that is the fact that the Vatican is a sovereign place, right? And the Pope is the head of it. So there is this aspect of a kingdom to the papacy, 100%. And I could show you, I think I've got it over there, and we might get into this a little bit later. But Matthew Henry, in his commentary on Daniel chapter 7, actually talks about how Calvin said that, these kings of this fourth beast were the emperors of Rome, and goes on to talk about how it is the papacy. Now, Matthew Henry makes an interesting point, because what he does is he compares and contrasts several different views on it, and says that they could technically all be right, because prophecy can have multiple fulfillings, right? So you have, like, for instance, I think it's right here. So I've got, and a matter of fact, I do need to make sure that I've got this one. And see, all my books are still a mess from last night's show, so I don't exactly know where everything is off the top, but I've got a commentary around here somewhere that literally talks about how this passage with Daniel 7:25 and the changings of times and laws fits Antiochus Epiphanes from the book of Maccabees perfectly. And so, we can get into that as well and see, kind of what it talks about with him in those sections. But, a lot of scholars agree that this passage has at least something to do with Antiochus, whether he is the actual fulfillment of it or just like a microcosm of the bigger picture. And I think that's kind of what Matthew Henry was talking about, is the fact that there can be like micro fulfillments. Like, for instance, 70 AD is a micro fulfillment of Luke chapter 21, right? Now, the preterists take it way too far, and what they do is they take that minor fulfillment and they apply it to everything. And I'm talking about hyper-preterists here, like the ones that believe like the millennial kingdom has already happened and all of this type of stuff. Because the reality is what a lot of people don't get into, and maybe we'll do a show on this one day, but there's actually multiple forms of preterism, and hyper-preterism is the one that's dangerous and, quite frankly, will damn your soul. Partial preterism, when you look at it, actually makes a little bit of sense, but like I said, that's a different show for a different day. Now, if I can, what I'd like to do is pull this up right here. Go ahead, now that I've done the seamless transition with this tie, I'm going to loosen that a little bit, loosen that collar. All right, so what I'd like to do, all right, so this is John Gill's commentary on Daniel chapter 7. And we're specifically going to look at what he says. Hopefully you guys can hear me. When I move around a little bit, sometimes these things get... So that volume might have been where I moved away from my microphone. So hopefully that should be better. Let's see... Let's see, maybe that'll help. So, all right, so this is what he says. He says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, or at the side of the Most High, setting up himself as a rival and upon an equality with him, taking the names and characters of holiness, infallibility, yea, of deity itself unto him, claiming a power to forgive sin, which is peculiar to God, and preferring his own laws, doctrines, and traditions to the word of God. Guys, who does that sound like? Because everything that he just said describes the Pope. 100%. He shall wear out the saints of the Most High by his wars with them and murders and massacres of them, by taking away their lives and their substance, so lessening their numbers and weakening their strength and power, wear them out as a garment is wore out, as the word signifies, utterly consume and destroy them, at least in his own apprehensions, which will be the case when the witnesses will be slain in Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, and especially will wear out their patience, or however thoroughly exercise it. The word in the Arabic language signifies to inflict and handle roughly, and such usage the saints have met with more or less in all ages from the man of sin. Now notice something. This is something that people never talk about in today's world. Is notice right there how he talked about in all ages from the man of sin, which means this man of sin exists throughout time. All right, so sorry about that. Sarah asked me if she wanted me to bring me dinner, but I have this weird thing about eating on camera, or even like having food near me while I'm on camera. But that's interesting to me, because that's what the early church taught. They taught, well, I shouldn't say the early church, because the fact of the matter is Rome in its incarnation right now did not exist in its modern carnation during the early church, although the roots were there, and I've shown that before. So let me see if I've got it. I may not, because like I said, my bookshelf has just gone all over the place lately. I don't think I have it, but I've got, like, you know, the lost Gospels, and how it really shows, you know, proto-Catholicism even as early as the late 1st century, early 2nd century. So, but then you've got this. This is my copy of City of God by Augustine, which, I mean, you can see this is a massive book. But, he talked about, he was seeing the decline of the Roman Empire and the rise of the Papal Empire. Which, by the way, Augustine is a Gnostic. He was a papal bishop, so it's not like, it's not like he's some great authority on Christianity, in my opinion, because he's not. But I mean, you can read that stuff and see, I believe Augustine is one of the reasons that the Catholic Church is the way they are today. So, but I say all that to say that it's not the early church, it's the reformers is the way I should have put it, so I apologize. But the reformers taught that the popes were the Antichrist. And, it's like it says in John, you have heard that Antichrist will come. And, he goes on to say that there are many Antichrists. This is anybody who doesn't confess that Jesus, they don't confess the proper Jesus, essentially. And so, because the popes, they do confess Jesus Christ, but they don't confess the proper Jesus Christ, right? It's just like, and this could feed into what Dan and I talked about last night, but we won't go there. So, and look, I've got that right here. So this is the Confession of Faith and Catechisms of the Orthodox Presbyterian Church right here. And this is what it says. It says, accordingly, the Committee on the Constitution, consisting of all of these guys who, quite frankly, really don't exist, recommended to the or they really don't. I can't keep my words straight tonight, guys. I apologize. They don't matter in the context of what we're talking about. So, but it does say, accordingly, these guys recommended to the Second General Assembly meeting in November of 1936 that the Confession of Faith and Catechisms be adopted in the form which they possess. That's a quote. Before the revisions of 1903, including the declaratory statement, were introduced, with two exceptions. The committee recommended that the change in Chapter 22.3 and the removal of the reference to the Pope as the Antichrist, but not the other changes in Chapters 25.6 be retained. The Assembly adopted these recommendations. It also rejected a proposal to append a declaratory statement to the confession that would have declared premillennialism to be consistent with the church standards, which I don't think premillennial is, but so to me, the fact that they removed that is only proof that, like I said, the reformers, the very people that wrote the confession, the Westminster Confession in its original state used to declare the Pope as the Antichrist. And I think that is so critical because all that is happening right now is just getting confirmed. It says, so I want to go on. Let's go on with John Gill. Move my microphone so that way you guys can hear me, because this microphone does such a great job of rejecting any noise that isn't directly in front of it. I love it. All right. And think to change times and laws, to alter the forms and constitutions of kingdoms. Why do you think it is every world leader always has an audience with the Pope, right? Because he's altering the forms and constitutions of kingdoms. Ultimately, that's the goal, I believe. And the customs and usages of them, yea, to set up and pull down kings at pleasure, or to change the use of times and seasons by setting apart days as holy for canonized saints. Well, literally, the word canon comes from Roman law. That's what canon means. So, I mean, once again, we just keep having these allusions to the Catholic Church. and appointing such days in a week or such a season in the year for abstinence from meats, which Paul actually declared was something that, was, a big thing you should watch out for in the last days. And such seasons, we already read that, and even to change the laws of God and man by dispensing with both and making new ones of his own. Now, maybe I'm just the paranoid tinfoil hat wearing guy, but I have to tell you that sounds exactly like what we are dealing with right now. And by the way, every single one of those, even though, I crack jokes about them because I think they're ridiculous, even though there's stuff on that list that I would agree with, but that's actually all from the CNN article. I took the actual commandments word for word from the CNN article and put those in there. So these are what the Pope is putting out for people. And yet you'll have all of these Christian leaders will sit there and they'll try to meet with the Pope, Christian, of course, in parentheses, people like Rick Warren, Kenneth Copeland. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the band. So I used to be a big, I love folk style music. I used to love the band Mumford & Son. And they just broke up after one of the band members left last year, or at least I think they have. I know that the lead singer, Marcus Mumford, has recently gone solo, and he just had an audience with the Pope. It's just, people look, especially this Pope. Like I said, even when I was a kid, I called him the dope Pope. I thought he was just the coolest thing since sliced bread. But I was extremely young and extremely naive. So, which I think he became Pope in 2015, which is the year that I got married. So just to show you, I was pretty young, I was in my early 20s, and, people in my generation, when they're in their early 20s, they're still kids, which was very true for me at the time. So, but, I say all this because, last night with Dan and Brian, we got to talking about strong delusion and things like that, and it is goodness, guys, my brain's not working. I'm sorry. So, that's what I see. I see a lot of strong delusion when it comes to this particular Pope and things like that. So I just got to address this because Lariva said in the chat, "Are you sure?" I don't know because I'm not sure of what you're referring to, so I don't know if I'm sure or not. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat and things like that. So, but yeah, no, I mean, what do you guys think? Am I just crazy here, or, is that what, is it, let me know what you guys think in the chat and in the comment section, but everything we're talking about seems to fit to a T. You can't write stuff that fits this tight together. You really can't. So, let's see. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying, Lariva. So Lariva said she thought this current Pope became Pope back in 97. I think that was the one before him. I want to say that was Benedict. But Francis became Pope in 2015, quietly pushed out the other guy, and became Pope. Because, the Pope's supposed to serve for life, but the one before Francis didn't. There was a big scandal, which was what number one referred to about the Catholic Church abusing kids. I mean, I can't get too much into it because YouTube will kick me off, but you guys all know what I'm talking about. And that was the way that, that basically happened. There was this big scandal with his predecessor, and they quietly pushed him out the door and brought Francis in. And I'm not sure if you guys know this, but Francis is also the first Jesuit that's ever been the Pope. So there's a lot of stuff that's really, really, interesting when you see it. So yeah. So I'm not going to read this comment out loud because it will get us removed. But Psalm 91, I agree, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's some of them that actually, they're looking at the kids like that because that's actually what they do. I can't confirm or deny that, but because I don't know for sure, but given some of the research that I've looked into, I would not be surprised at all. So, but look, before we go on, I want to come over here because Paul elaborates on this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and you guys have known me. Anybody who has listened to me from the very beginning, you guys know that one of my favorite scriptures is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Because the reason, for those of you who do not know, the reason that I started this channel was I was in a fellowship where they taught that 2 Thessalonians 2 with the falling away, they taught that was the rapture. And of course you guys know me, I can't bite my tongue at all. And I was like, no, absolutely not. And they're like, yeah, if you look at the evidence of the Geneva Bible and yada, yada, it actually said departing and all that. That's why if you go back to the very bottom of our YouTube page, I have this 20-minute video called Rapture or Rebellion. And literally did a deep dive into the word apostasy and not only how it's used in the Bible, but how it was used in everyday Greek manuscripts. We're talking land deeds, historical documents about rebellions, things like very fascinating stuff. Dry read, but very important. So, but this is what it says. It says, "Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, by our gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first," which, I think we would all agree that we are in that time, that falling away, "and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." Now, we just read, the quote from John Gill, where he said, "In all ages, from the man of sin." So there's always been some form, but I believe there will be that final culmination. And I've got my copy of Against Heresy, Against Heresies by Irenaeus over there in volume 1 of the Ante-Nicene Church Fathers. He even says that at the end times, that's what the number 666 represents. It represents this man who will represent the apostasy of 6,000 years of rebellion against God, all in one person. And I believe that's specifically who Paul's talking about here. But this is what it says. It says, "For them, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God." Now, I think that's very important because when you look, and we've done shows on this as well, I don't remember which one. I want to say it was one of the early CCR weeklies. And basically what would happen, and I'll pull it up just so you guys can see it. Give me just a second. Let's see. All right, so check this out. So let's read what John Gill says on this. So this is John Gill's note on 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. He says, who opposeth, or is an opposer, an adversary of Christ, the Antichrist, who opposeth himself in his kingly office, styling himself the head and spouse of the church. Guys, I'm telling you, this was all here, and it's just been completely forgotten about. It's been like it's wiped from the record. It is outrageous. This should be a high crime on the theology side. This should be a theological crime, and I believe it is, honestly. I believe everybody who did this, who wiped this from the record, they're going to have hell to pay for it. And so this is what it goes on to say. So, assuming himself all the power in heaven and in earth, taking upon him to dispense with the laws of Christ. We just read this in Daniel 7. To dispense with the laws of Christ and to make new ones, who opposes him in his priestly office by pretending to offer him up again in the sacrifice of the Mass, and by making angels and saints departed intercessors and advocates, and also in his prophetic office by teaching for doctrines the commandments of men, and setting up unwritten traditions before the word of God, requiring the worship of images, angels, and saints, when Christ requires that the Lord God only should be worshiped and served, and by introducing the doctrines and works and of merit instead of grace, and with a multitude of other things in which he most manifestly appears to be diametrically opposite and contrary to Christ. Goes on with the next part, and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. The Syriac version renders this clause, and it says something in Aramaic, and religion. And the Greek word does signify religion, worship, or devotion, as it is translated in Acts chapter 17, verse 23. But here the act of worship is put for the object and rightly rendered of that which is worshipped, and is in the Vulgate Latin version and in the Arabic version, or that which is to be worshipped. And it was usual with the Jews to call, and yes, guys, I'm aware the camera went out. I'll fix that in just a second. Or that which is to be worshipped, and it was usual with the Jews to call God the object of worship by the name of worship itself, and by which they used to swear. You remember what Jesus said about that. It is said of Rabbi Benjamin the Just that he was appointed over the alms chest. One time, a woman came to him and said, Rabbi, relieve me. He said to her, by the worship, that is, by God who is worshipped. There's nothing in the alms chest and anywhere. So, basically what he's doing there is he's quoting. See, this is what I like about John Gill. John Gill knew what he was talking about. He would sit there and say the Jews said this, and then he would quote from their writings. Dude was a smart man. So anyway, I think you guys kind of get, some of the point there with this, but but look, so here's an interesting thing. So it says, and the meaning is that Antichrist would exalt himself above all the gods of the Gentiles, who are only nominally and not by nature gods. To these were ascribed some one thing, to some another. One had the government of heaven, another of hell, another of the seas, and another of the winds. But this haughty creature, Antichrist, assumes himself all power, both in heaven, earth, and hell. Angels are sometimes called gods. See Psalm 8, verse 4. Because they are sent of God and sometimes represent him. The popes of Rome have exalted themselves above these. Pope Clement VI proclaimed a jubilee and promised forgiveness of sins to all that should come to Rome. And in his bull for it, it says that if any man that was confessed should die by the way, he should be free from all his sins. And we do command the angels that they take such a soul out of purgatory, entirely absolved, and introduce it into the glory of paradise. And in a manuscript in the library at Helmstead are these words: "We command the angels that they carry such a soul into Abraham's bosom as soon as it has left the body." Kings and civil magistrates called gods in Psalm 82, verse 6. And this monster of iniquity and firstborn of Satan, the popes of Rome, have exalted themselves above these. They have not only took upon them to excommunicate emperors and kings, like we talked about, but to depose them and take away their crowns from them, and to give their kingdoms to others and absolve their subjects from allegiance and fidelity to them. And an emperor has held a pope's stirrup when he alighted from his horse and was severely reprimanded for holding the left instead of the right stirrup. And the same emperor held another pope's stirrup while he got on his horse, and who set his foot upon his neck when he absolved him, being before excommunicated by him, using these words in Psalm 91:13, "Thou hast tread upon the lion." An emperor and an empress waited at the Pope's gates 3 days barefoot. Another emperor and empress were crowned by the Pope with his feet. He took the crown with his feet, and they, bowing down, put it on their heads and then kicked it off. And one of our own kings resigned his crown and the ensigns of his royalty to the Pope's I don't know what that word is. Anyway, who kept them 5 days, when he offered a sum of money to him as an earnest of his subjection, to show his master's grandeur. He spurned at it. So you guys, I'm hoping you guys, basically, he goes on and on and on about this. He talks about what the Jewish writers call. But this is the part I want to get to. So, we'll get to this. So it says, so that he sitteth as, I wanted to show, before we get into this part, so bear with me, but I wanted to show that, this is what they taught. When they talk about the man of sin, they're talking about the Pope. I think we've clearly established that now. This is what it says. So that he sitteth in the temple of God, not in the temple of Jerusalem, which was to be destroyed and never to be rebuilt more, and was destroyed before this man of sin was revealed, but in the church of God, so called. 1 Corinthians 3:16, the Ethiopic version renders it, in the house of God. For Antichrist rose up out of and in the midst of the church, and it was a true church in which he first appeared, and over which he usurped power and authority, though it has been so corrupted by him, and now to be only nominally so. Here he sits, and his homage done by him by his creatures. So, basically, and I want to make sure I answer this, because if you ever hear Hebrew roots people talk about the Church of Rome, how it's illegitimate, it was never a church, false. And I'm going to show you why. Because if you were to read the Apostolic Fathers, the two first writings in there are the first and second letters of Clement of Rome. He was the Bishop of Rome. Now, from Clement, later on down the line, the Church of Rome became corrupted. The first, I call him a proto-pope because he wasn't technically a pope, but the roots of this modern Catholic Church took place with Constantine, right? And he usurped the original church after they had gone rotten, and eventually it was from him and his bishops that the papacy eventually arose. Does that make sense? So this church absolutely started out as a true church and then went sour through the Pope, starting with the rule of Constantine as the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, right? And so then you have it going from there. You can go through down the line with Justinian and all of these guys. And then you have the papacy. They did this big thing. You have the schism of the Byzantine and, the Eastern, Western, and that's where you get, your Eastern Orthodox and your Roman Catholic Church. So, I mean, all the history's there. It's very fascinating stuff. But, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind when you look at this. And look, John Gill isn't the only one. You could go like the original Geneva. That was the big deal about the original Geneva. That was why they were burning these guys at the stake, these Bible translators, because they gave the lay people study notes. So the Geneva Bible is basically the first complete study Bible. It had, commentary notes and all of this stuff in it, which would actually legitimately say that the Pope was the Antichrist. It's really interesting. I'm trying to get myself a facsimile copy. That way, hopefully, I can show you guys. But you can find it online. Matter of fact, we went to the 1560 Geneva in that Rapture or Rebellion video because I showed where the translators in their argument above chapter 2 said that it was a spiritual departure, completely obliterating that nonsense of it being a rapture, which is just asinine, but that's neither here nor there. So watch this. Let's go on. So it says, and it was a true church in which he first appeared, and over which he usurped power and authority, though it has been so corrupted by him, has now to be only nominally so. Here he sits, and has homage done him by his creatures as if he was a god, and is not only styled Christ's vicar, but a God on earth, and our Lord God the Pope. Scroll down a little bit. So in the triumphal arch at the entry of Pope Sixtus IV, these lines were put: Auriculo vocus mundi moderatus habitatus et merito in terris crederis est dens. Or the sense is that he governed the world by the word and was deservedly believed to be God on earth. And their canon law says, now this is Roman Catholic canon law, it is clearly enough shown that the Pope cannot be loosed or bound by any secular power, since it is evident that he is called God by that pious Prince Constantine, and is manifest that God cannot be judged by men. And Pope John the 22nd is expressly called, quote, our Lord God the Pope. The Ethiopic version reads, he shall say to all, I am the Lord God. See Ezekiel 28:2. The Alexandrian copy and some others and the Vulgate Latin version leave out this phrase as God, but the Syriac retains it. However, the same blasphemy is expressed in the next clause, showing himself that he is God, by usurping a power over the consciences and souls of men, by dispensing with the laws of God and man, by assuming to him all power in heaven and in earth, by taking upon him to open and shut the gates of heaven at pleasure, and by pardoning sin, which none but God can do. This is the mouth speaking blasphemies in Revelation 13, verse 5. So, I mean, I don't know what more people could need. I mean, right there it says, what this is. And, before our last thing we're going to read before we go out for this is Revelation chapter 13. Now, it talks about 13, verse 5, but what I want to look at is the beast of the earth. Because this is what it says. It says, and I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So we're literally talking about somebody who's going to look the part of a lamb, somebody who's going to look Christ-like, but he's going to speak as a dragon, right? We know the dragon gave the first beast authority, so these are literally cut from the same mold. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Now this is interesting, because if you go back to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. This is what it says. And then shall that wicked be revealed, who the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love for the truth, that they might be saved. Now, we just talked about people like this on last night's show on the Dan Badandi show, which if you have not seen it yet, you need to go back and watch that. Because the reality is when you talk about people who are saying that Jesus and Lucifer are the same, Lucifer literally is the embodiment of the spirit of Antichrist. And so if you have people who are saying that they're one and the same, they are trying to get people to accept this guy when he comes on the scene. Because what is going to happen is he's going to look the part, he's going to have the signs, he's going to have the wonders, and he is going to deceive them who have not a love for the truth. And I've been trying to tell people for years that this climate change madness is nothing but a religion. That's why I called it the New Climate Covenant, because I'm not sure if you guys saw the weird thing that happened on Mount Sinai, and we actually talked about this in about hour number 4 of the show last night. We talked about these people just spitting in the face of God. You take things like this, the World Economic Forum, the fact that people want you to eat bugs, all of this stuff, and you put it together. The world is being primed for this guy to arrive on the scene. That's why they need all of this controlled chaos that is going on throughout the world. That's why they need cities burned down, and they need all of this stuff. I've been reading the book of Isaiah, and right off the bat in Isaiah, it talks about cities being burned and all of this, all these disobedient people. Guys, this is the falling away. Everything that you see, all of these cities, whether it's, Israel or Judah or Sodom and Gomorrah, anytime you see something destroyed for rebellion against God, that is your cue that you need to perk up and do some self-examination. Because the fact of the matter is that's what each and every one of us have waiting for us. We're going to meet the same fate as this guy and be destroyed by the mouth of Christ. You think about that. He shall destroy him. That's what it says. The Lord shall consume him with the spirit of his mouth. Why? Because Jesus said it was given to him to be the judge, right? The Father gave it to him to be the judge. And so he's going to destroy with the spirit of his mouth in judgment. Jesus is the one who is going to throw the beast and the false prophet into the lake of fire. And so, and I really don't know what else to say to it, honestly, guys. That's to talk about the way Forrest Gump said, that's just, that's all I got to say about that. So anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But, my goodness, can you get any more clear? Like, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're telling you exactly what they're doing. They're not there's no deep symbolism here or anything like that. No, they're just coming out and saying, we're taking over. But before we go, I don't want to end on a dark note, so let's go back to Daniel chapter 7, and we'll end with this. Daniel chapter 7. And this is what it says. But the judgment shall sit. This is verse 26. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the wholeness of heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Psalm 110, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. In the book of Revelation, you look at the letters, the epistles to the 7 churches within the book of Revelation, and Jesus says, over and over again, he who endures till the end, he who endures till the end, right? This is what is in store for each and every one of us. Revelation chapter 2, verse 11. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. If we can just push through all of this pressure to give in and to capitulate to this beast system, those who endure till the end shall be saved. Those who overcome shall not be touched by the second death. So, guys, feel free to watch this as many times as you can. Normally, I like to pull it up on the screen. I have not figured out a way to do that with eSword as of yet with the streaming software that I'm using. Hopefully, we can get that. But, feel free, go back. Look, I always leave these up there. That way you guys can go back and listen to them and, really let this information hit home. Make sure, if you guys don't mind, please leave a like on the video. I've talked to several different people on YouTube, and they say that is the key. If we can just get that pushed out there for people to see this, maybe it'll take off and more people can see the truth about the Antichrist system that is the papacy. So, guys, thank you guys so much, and we're going to leave off with a couple of ads for, with Dan and his stuff. If you guys haven't seen it yet with his his documentary on the Great Seal, it feeds into this stuff too. So we'll play that before we head out. God bless you guys. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys hopefully, if everything goes right. Sarah and I have scheduled to sit down and talk and do an episode tonight. So hopefully that will be coming out in the next week. So y'all take care and have a great night.
Turn it around to the reverse side, where you see the two great seals of the United States of America.
Yep.
Okay? Now, if you notice, it says those are supposed to be the two great seals of the United States of America, correct?
Yep.
Those aren't. Those are the two seals of the Order of the Illuminati. Now, I have all this memorized from my days in the Illuminati.
Now, this went on the dollar bill in 1935, but this reflects ancient beliefs of secret societies that go back literally before the birth of Christ. It symbolizes the ancient goal of secret societies of the establishment of what in Scripture we see in Revelation 13 as the reign of the beast and the false prophet.
History of the Great Seal is a very fascinating story. I got one right here. The Great Seal of the United States, or is it the Great Seal of the Illuminati? There's a lot more than meets the eye.